Question 1. The performance metrics show a significant increase in application volume for the upcoming admissions cycle, leading to concerns about the admissions office's capacity to process applications within established timelines. The university leadership is exploring strategies to optimize the admissions process to ensure timely and thorough review of all applications, while maintaining the integrity and fairness of the evaluation. Which of the following approaches best balances operational efficiency with regulatory compliance and ethical considerations for a U.S.-based university? Option A. Significantly increase the number of applications assigned to each admissions counselor to expedite the review process, assuming that increased workload will naturally lead to faster processing. Option B. Outsource a substantial portion of the application review process to a third-party vendor with minimal direct oversight from the university's admissions office. Option C. Implement a phased approach to application review, prioritizing applications based on predetermined criteria and utilizing technology to streamline data entry and initial screening, while ensuring human review for all borderline or complex cases. Option D. Introduce a fully automated, AI-driven system for initial application scoring and ranking, with human review only for the top and bottom percentile of applicants. Correct answer is C. Implement a phased approach to application review, prioritizing applications based on predetermined criteria and utilizing technology to streamline data entry and initial screening, while ensuring human review for all borderline or complex cases. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's operational efficiency with the integrity of its admissions process, all while adhering to specific U.S. federal regulations governing higher education institutions. The need for process optimization must be weighed against potential unintended consequences that could violate compliance standards or ethical principles. Careful judgment is required to ensure that improvements do not inadvertently create barriers for eligible applicants or compromise the fairness of the evaluation. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the admissions workflow to identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies, followed by the implementation of targeted improvements that enhance speed and accuracy without compromising the thoroughness of applicant evaluation. This approach aligns with the principles of good governance and operational excellence expected of institutions receiving federal funding. Specifically, it respects the need for a fair and equitable admissions process, which is implicitly protected by regulations like the Higher Education Act of 1965 and its subsequent amendments, which aim to ensure access and opportunity. The focus is on optimizing the asterisk process asterisk of evaluation, not altering the asterisk criteria asterisk or asterisk standards asterisk of evaluation in a way that could be discriminatory or arbitrary. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on reducing the time spent per application by implementing automated pre-screening tools without human oversight risks overlooking nuanced aspects of an applicant's profile. This could lead to the rejection of qualified candidates, potentially violating principles of equal opportunity and fair consideration, which are foundational to U.S. higher education regulations. Such an approach might also inadvertently introduce bias if the algorithms are not carefully designed and validated, leading to disparate impact on certain applicant groups, which could raise concerns under anti-discrimination laws. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed by significantly increasing the volume of applications reviewed by each admissions officer, without proportional increases in staff or resources, would likely lead to rushed and superficial evaluations. This compromises the quality of the admissions decision-making process. While not a direct violation of a specific statute, it undermines the spirit of thorough review and could lead to errors in judgment, potentially impacting the university's reputation and its commitment to admitting qualified students. This could also indirectly lead to issues if it results in the admission of unqualified students, impacting program quality and potentially leading to compliance issues related to student success metrics. A third incorrect approach that involves outsourcing a significant portion of the application review to external vendors without establishing robust quality control mechanisms and clear oversight is also professionally unsound. While outsourcing can be a valid strategy for process optimization, the university retains ultimate responsibility for the integrity of its admissions decisions. A lack of direct oversight could lead to inconsistent application of standards, potential data security breaches, and a diminished ability to ensure compliance with U.S. higher education regulations. This could expose the university to significant risks, including reputational damage and potential sanctions if compliance failures are identified. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multifaceted approach. First, clearly define the objectives of process optimization, ensuring they align with the university's mission and regulatory obligations. Second, conduct a thorough analysis of the current process, identifying specific pain points and areas for improvement. Third, brainstorm potential solutions, evaluating each for its potential impact on efficiency, fairness, and compliance. Fourth, consult with relevant stakeholders, including admissions staff, legal counsel, and compliance officers, to ensure all perspectives are considered. Fifth, pilot any proposed changes on a small scale to assess their effectiveness and identify any unintended consequences before full implementation. Finally, establish ongoing monitoring and evaluation mechanisms to ensure that optimized processes remain effective and compliant over time. Question 2. The investigation demonstrates that an applicant to American University, Washington, D.C., has submitted an essay detailing significant personal hardship that directly impacted their academic performance in a specific semester. However, a review of their official transcript reveals a discrepancy in the grading for that same semester, suggesting a higher level of academic engagement than the essay implies. Admissions committee is now deliberating on how to proceed with this application, considering the applicant's compelling narrative and the potential for misrepresentation. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of fair and ethical university admissions within the U.S. regulatory framework? Option A. Admit the student but place them on immediate academic probation for their first semester, citing the unresolved discrepancy as the reason. Option B. Immediately reject the application due to the irreconcilable discrepancy between the essay and the transcript, as academic integrity is paramount. Option C. Admit the student based on the strength of their personal narrative and the potential for overcoming adversity, without further investigation into the transcript discrepancy. Option D. Initiate a formal process to seek clarification from the applicant regarding the discrepancy, potentially requesting supporting documentation or an explanation from their previous institution, before making a final decision. The correct answer is B. Immediately reject the application due to the irreconcilable discrepancy between the essay and the transcript, as academic integrity is paramount. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires navigating the ethical and regulatory landscape of academic admissions, specifically concerning the integrity of the application process and the equitable treatment of all applicants. Pressure to admit a student with a compelling personal narrative, even with potential discrepancies, necessitates a careful balancing of institutional values, fairness, and adherence to established admissions policies. The core of the challenge lies in distinguishing between genuine hardship and potential misrepresentation, and in ensuring that any decision made is both defensible and consistent with American universities' commitment to academic integrity and equal opportunity. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of all application materials, including seeking clarification from the applicant and any provided references regarding the noted discrepancies. This method upholds the principle of fairness by ensuring that all applicants are evaluated based on consistent standards and that any potential issues are addressed transparently. It aligns with ethical admissions practices that prioritize honesty and due diligence. Specifically, this approach respects the regulatory framework governing university admissions by avoiding arbitrary decisions and by ensuring that admissions criteria are applied uniformly. It also reflects a commitment to academic integrity by not overlooking potential misrepresentations that could undermine the value of an admitted student's qualifications. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the application based on the initial discrepancies without further investigation. This fails to acknowledge the possibility of extenuating circumstances or simple errors that can be clarified. Ethically, it is unfair to penalize an applicant without due process. Regulationally, it could be seen as a failure to apply admissions standards consistently and fairly. Another incorrect approach would be to admit the student solely based on the compelling narrative, overlooking the discrepancies entirely. This approach prioritizes emotional appeal over factual verification, potentially compromising the integrity of the admissions process. It risks admitting students who may not meet the established academic or ethical standards, and it sets a precedent that could lead to future challenges in maintaining a fair and rigorous admission system. This action would violate the principle of objective evaluation and could be seen as a breach of trust with other applicants and the academic community. A further incorrect approach would be to admit the student, but then implement a probationary status without a clear, documented rationale tied to the specific discrepancies. While seemingly a compromise, this lacks transparency and could create an unfair burden on the student without a clear understanding of the underlying issues. It also fails to address the initial integrity concerns in a direct and principled manner, potentially creating future administrative complications. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, multi-step approach. First, identify and clearly define the discrepancies. Second, initiate a process for seeking clarification, which may involve direct communication with the applicant or their references. Third, objectively evaluate the information gathered, considering both the applicant's narrative and the verified facts. Fourth, consult relevant university policies and ethical guidelines. Finally, make a decision that is fair, transparent, and consistent with the institution's values and regulatory obligations, documenting the rationale thoroughly. Question 3. The analysis reveals that an admissions committee member at American University, Washington, D.C., has a close personal relationship with an applicant being reviewed by that committee. The committee member is aware of this relationship and its potential to influence their judgment. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach for the committee member to take in this situation? Option A. Avoid any direct involvement in the applicant's review, but refrain from formally disclosing the relationship, hoping it goes unnoticed. Option B. Immediately disclose the personal relationship to the admissions committee chair or designated university official and recuse themselves from any discussion or decision-making regarding the applicant. Option C. Discreetly advocate for the applicant's admission to other committee members, framing it as a personal recommendation based on perceived merit. Option D. Proceed with evaluating the applicant's application as objectively as possible, believing their professional integrity will prevent bias. The correct answer is B. Immediately disclose the personal relationship to the admissions committee chair or designated university official and recuse themselves from any discussion or decision-making regarding the applicant. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate a situation where personal interests might conflict with the ethical and regulatory obligations owed to an institution. The American University, Washington, D.C. entrance exam, like many academic and professional admissions processes, operates under strict guidelines to ensure fairness, integrity, and equal opportunity for all applicants. The challenge lies in recognizing and upholding these principles even when faced with a personal connection that could introduce bias or the appearance of impropriety. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all decisions are made impartially and in accordance with established university policies and ethical standards. The correct approach involves a transparent and proactive disclosure of the personal relationship to the relevant university authorities. This demonstrates integrity and adherence to ethical principles by acknowledging a potential conflict of interest. By recusing oneself from any decision-making process that could be influenced by the personal relationship, the individual upholds the university's commitment to fairness and merit-based admissions. This aligns with the ethical duty to avoid conflicts of interest and to maintain the impartiality of the admissions process, which is a cornerstone of academic integrity. Such disclosure and recusal are often mandated by university policies and professional ethical codes designed to safeguard the reputation and fairness of the institution. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the evaluation without disclosing the relationship. This failure constitutes a breach of ethical conduct by concealing a material fact that could influence judgment. It violates the principle of impartiality and creates an environment where favoritism, or the perception thereof, can undermine the integrity of the admissions process. Furthermore, it likely contravenes specific university policies regarding conflicts of interest and admissions procedures, which are designed to prevent such situations. Another incorrect approach is to attempt to subtly influence the outcome in favor of the applicant due to the personal connection, even without explicit disclosure. This is a direct violation of ethical obligations and likely university regulations. It represents a deliberate act of bias, compromising the fairness of the evaluation and the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. Such actions can lead to severe reputational damage for the individual and the university, as well as potential disciplinary action. Professional decision-making framework in such situations emphasizes transparency, integrity, and adherence to established rules. It involves 1. Identifying potential conflicts of interest. 2. Understanding the relevant university policies and ethical guidelines. 3. Disclosing the conflict to the appropriate authority. 4. Recusing oneself from any aspect of the decision-making process where the conflict exists. 5. Documenting the disclosure and recusal. This framework ensures that decisions are made impartially and that the integrity of the process is maintained. Question 4. Operational review demonstrates that a prospective student preparing for the American University, Washington, D.C. entrance exam has encountered conflicting advice on the interpretation of the Academic Integrity Policy section of the official exam preparation materials. Some advice from unofficial online student forums suggests that certain forms of collaborative study, even if not directly sharing exam content, might be permissible as long as they don't involve direct answers. However, the official materials emphasize a strict interpretation of academic honesty and prohibit any form of unauthorized assistance or collaboration that could be construed as gaining an unfair advantage. The student is seeking to understand the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with the university's specific entrance exam regulations. Option A. Seek clarification directly from the American University, Washington, D.C. admissions office or the designated exam administrator regarding the interpretation of the academic integrity policy and permissible study methods. Option B. Interpret the ambiguous information in the official materials in a manner that offers the most flexibility for collaborative study, believing that the university would not penalize a student for a reasonable interpretation. Option C. Rely on general best practices for standardized test preparation, assuming that the university's policy is likely to be similar to those of other institutions. Option D. Proceed with collaborative study methods as interpreted from unofficial student forums, assuming that as long as direct exam content is not shared, it aligns with the spirit of academic integrity. The correct answer is A. Seek clarification directly from the American University, Washington, D.C. admissions office or the designated exam administrator regarding the interpretation of the academic integrity policy and permissible study methods. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on a high-stakes entrance exam, coupled with the availability of potentially misleading information, requires careful judgment to ensure ethical conduct and adherence to university policies. The correct approach involves prioritizing the university's official guidelines and seeking clarification directly from authorized sources. This aligns with the ethical obligation to act with honesty and integrity, and the regulatory requirement to comply with the specific rules and procedures established by American University, Washington, D.C. for its entrance examination. Relying on unofficial interpretations or external advice that contradicts official guidance would violate these principles and could lead to disqualification or other disciplinary actions. An incorrect approach would be to rely on information obtained from unofficial student forums or social media groups. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement of adhering to the official examination framework and introduces a significant ethical risk of misinterpretation or misinformation, potentially leading to a violation of exam rules. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that common test-taking strategies applicable to other standardized tests are automatically valid for this specific entrance exam. This overlooks the unique jurisdiction of American University, Washington, D.C.'s entrance exam regulations, which may have specific prohibitions or requirements not found elsewhere. This demonstrates a failure to conduct due diligence regarding the specific rules governing the exam. A further incorrect approach would be to interpret ambiguous information in a way that provides a personal advantage without verifying its accuracy with official university sources. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to the principle of academic honesty and a disregard for the established regulatory framework of the examination. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the governing regulations, a commitment to seeking information from authoritative sources, and a critical evaluation of all information received, especially when it appears to contradict official guidance. When in doubt, direct communication with the admissions office or the designated examination authority is paramount. Question 5. To address the challenge of submitting a compelling entrance essay for the American University, Washington, D.C., an applicant participated in a brainstorming session with several other prospective students to generate ideas and discuss potential themes. The applicant then independently wrote their essay, incorporating some of the concepts discussed, but ensuring all phrasing and arguments were their own. However, the applicant is unsure if this level of collaborative idea generation, even with independent writing, fully aligns with the university's academic integrity expectations for the entrance essay. Option A. The applicant should assume that any idea generation session with other applicants is permissible as long as the final essay is written independently and does not contain plagiarized content. Option B. The applicant should submit the essay without further consideration, believing that the independent writing process negates any ethical concerns related to the brainstorming session. Option C. The applicant should subtly weave elements of the group's shared ideas into the essay without explicitly mentioning the brainstorming session, hoping the university will not detect the collaborative origin. Option D. The applicant should proactively contact the American University, Washington, D.C. admissions office to inquire about their specific policies regarding collaborative idea generation for entrance essays, and submit the essay only after receiving clear guidance. The correct answer is D. The applicant should proactively contact the American University, Washington, D.C. admissions office to inquire about their specific policies regarding collaborative idea generation for entrance essays, and submit the essay only after receiving clear guidance. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to navigate the ethical considerations of academic integrity and the university's commitment to fair evaluation. The applicant must balance the desire to present their best work with the obligation to adhere to academic honesty policies. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between legitimate collaboration and academic misconduct. The correct approach involves the applicant proactively seeking clarification from the admissions office regarding the specific guidelines for the essay submission. This demonstrates a commitment to understanding and adhering to the university's policies, which is a fundamental ethical principle in academic settings. By seeking guidance, the applicant ensures their actions align with the American University, Washington, D.C.'s expectations for academic integrity, thereby avoiding any potential misinterpretation of their submission as a violation of the Honor Code. This proactive communication is a cornerstone of ethical conduct in academic and professional environments, fostering transparency and trust. An incorrect approach would be to assume that the collaborative brainstorming session was permissible without explicit confirmation. This fails to acknowledge the potential for such collaboration to cross the line into academic dishonesty, especially if the final essay reflects ideas or phrasing directly derived from the group, without proper attribution or independent development. This approach risks violating the university's honor code and demonstrating a lack of respect for academic integrity. Another incorrect approach would be to submit the essay without any consideration for the collaborative process, effectively ignoring the ethical implications of the brainstorming session. This demonstrates a disregard for the university's policies and a potential lack of personal accountability for the integrity of one's work. It suggests a willingness to overlook ethical considerations in pursuit of admission. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to intentionally obscure the extent of the collaboration in the submitted essay. This is a direct act of academic dishonesty, undermining the principle of presenting one's own original work and demonstrating a severe ethical lapse. It violates the trust placed in applicants by the university and would likely lead to severe consequences if discovered. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a clear understanding of institutional policies, a commitment to ethical conduct, and proactive communication. When in doubt about the permissibility of an action, especially concerning academic or professional integrity, the best practice is to seek clarification from the relevant authority. This ensures that actions are aligned with established standards and avoids potential ethical breaches. Question 6. The review process indicates that a member of the American University, Washington, D.C. Admissions Committee has a close personal relationship with an applicant whose file is currently under consideration. The committee member has not disclosed this relationship. What is the most appropriate course of action for the committee member to take immediately? Option A. Continue with the review process, assuring themselves of their ability to remain objective and impartial. Option B. Immediately disclose the personal relationship to the Dean of Admissions or the designated university official responsible for conflict resolution. Option C. Avoid participating in the discussion and voting on the applicant's file without formally notifying anyone of the reason. Option D. Discreetly inform the applicant that they will advocate for their admission due to their personal connection. The correct answer is A. Continue with the review process, assuring themselves of their ability to remain objective and impartial. Explanation. The review process indicates a potential conflict of interest within the admissions committee, a scenario that is professionally challenging due to the inherent tension between individual relationships and the university's commitment to fair and objective evaluation. Maintaining the integrity of the admissions process is paramount, and any perception of bias can undermine public trust in the institution. Careful judgment is required to navigate these sensitive situations ethically and in accordance with established university policies and relevant U.S. federal regulations governing higher education admissions and non-discrimination. The correct approach involves immediate disclosure of the potential conflict to the appropriate university authority, such as the Dean of Admissions or the Provost's office. This aligns with ethical principles of transparency and accountability, and is often mandated by university policies designed to prevent conflicts of interest. U.S. federal regulations, while not always explicitly detailing internal university conflict of interest procedures, emphasize the importance of fair and equitable treatment of all applicants, which necessitates addressing any situation that could compromise objectivity. Prompt disclosure allows the university to implement measures to mitigate the conflict, such as recusal from the applicant's review or an independent review process, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the admissions decision. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the review without disclosing the relationship. This violates ethical obligations of honesty and impartiality. It also creates a significant risk of actual or perceived bias, which could lead to legal challenges under U.S. anti-discrimination laws if the applicant is denied admission and alleges unfair treatment due to the undisclosed relationship. Another incorrect approach is to attempt to manage the conflict independently by downplaying its significance or assuring oneself of objectivity. This demonstrates a failure to recognize the importance of procedural fairness and the appearance of impropriety, which can be as damaging as actual bias. Such an approach ignores the university's established protocols for conflict resolution and erodes the trust placed in committee members. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, adherence to policy, and the preservation of institutional integrity. When a potential conflict of interest arises, the first step is to identify it clearly. The next step is to consult relevant university policies and any applicable U.S. federal guidelines. The paramount action is to disclose the conflict to the designated authority. This allows for a structured and objective resolution, ensuring that the admissions process remains fair and defensible. If in doubt, always err on the side of disclosure and seek guidance. Question 7. What factors determine the ethical permissibility of a candidate's actions when faced with challenging questions on the American University Washington, D.C. entrance exam, particularly when considering the potential for external assistance? Option A. The candidate's perceived level of difficulty of the exam questions and the proximity of the deadline for submission. Option B. The candidate's prior academic record and the perceived fairness of the examination scoring system. Option C. The candidate's intent to gain an advantage and the explicit prohibitions outlined in the examination's official instructions and guidelines. Option D. The candidate's personal belief in the importance of academic achievement and the potential for future success at the university. The correct answer is A. The candidate's perceived level of difficulty of the exam questions and the proximity of the deadline for submission. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair evaluation. The pressure to perform well on an entrance exam, especially for a prestigious institution like American University, can lead individuals to consider ethically questionable shortcuts. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation, upholding both personal integrity and the principles of fair competition. The correct approach involves recognizing the ethical boundaries and the potential consequences of any action that compromises academic honesty. It requires prioritizing integrity and understanding that success achieved through dishonest means is not true success and can lead to severe repercussions, including disqualification and damage to one's reputation. This approach aligns with the fundamental ethical principles expected of all students and professionals, emphasizing honesty, fairness, and respect for established rules and guidelines. For an entrance exam, this means adhering strictly to the provided instructions and prohibitions. An incorrect approach that involves seeking unauthorized assistance or using prohibited materials directly violates the core principles of academic integrity. Such actions are not only unethical, but also explicitly prohibited by the examination's rules and regulations. This failure to adhere to the established framework undermines the fairness of the examination process for all candidates and demonstrates a lack of respect for the institution and its standards. Another incorrect approach that involves misrepresenting one's qualifications or background to gain an advantage is also a serious ethical and regulatory breach. Universities rely on accurate information to assess candidates' suitability and to maintain the integrity of their admissions process. Deception in this regard erodes trust and can lead to the admission of unqualified individuals, thereby compromising the academic environment. A professional decision-making process in such situations should begin with a clear understanding of the examination's rules and ethical expectations. This involves actively seeking clarification on any ambiguities and committing to upholding these standards. When faced with a temptation or a situation that could lead to an ethical compromise, a professional should pause, reflect on the potential consequences, and consider the long-term impact on their reputation and future opportunities. Consulting with trusted mentors or university advisors can also provide valuable guidance. The ultimate decision should always prioritize honesty, fairness, and adherence to established regulations, even if it means foregoing an immediate perceived advantage. Question 8. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a fellow applicant whom you have met briefly offers to share study tips that they claim will guarantee success on the American University Washington, D.C. entrance exam, implying these tips are derived from insider knowledge not publicly available. You are aware that the exam's integrity is paramount and that any form of academic dishonesty is strictly prohibited. How should you respond to this offer? Option A. Accept the study tips, but only use them for general understanding, not for direct application during the exam. Option B. Ignore the offer and continue with your own preparation without acknowledging the applicant's statement. Option C. Engage in a discussion with the applicant to understand the nature of their insider knowledge to assess its potential benefit. Option D. Politely decline the offer, stating your commitment to preparing through official channels and adhering to all exam regulations. The correct answer is D. Politely decline the offer, stating your commitment to preparing through official channels and adhering to all exam regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on a crucial entrance exam, coupled with the availability of potentially unauthorized assistance, creates an ethical tightrope. Careful judgment is required to uphold ethical standards while navigating the complexities of student aspirations and institutional policies. The correct approach involves prioritizing academic integrity and adhering strictly to the American University Washington, D.C.'s established examination guidelines. This means refusing any assistance that could be construed as cheating or a violation of the exam's rules. The regulatory and ethical justification lies in the fundamental principles of fairness, honesty, and the value of earned achievement. The American University Washington, D.C. entrance exam, like any reputable academic institution, operates under a framework that demands a level playing field for all applicants. Providing or accepting unauthorized assistance undermines this principle, devalues the efforts of honest students, and compromises the integrity of the admissions process. Adhering to the exam's rules ensures that admissions decisions are based on genuine merit and preparedness. An incorrect approach would be to accept the offer of assistance, even if it seems minor or is presented as a way to level the playing field, due to perceived external disadvantages. This action directly violates the core ethical tenet of academic honesty. The regulatory failure here is a breach of the American University, Washington, D.C. entrance exams explicit rules against cheating and unauthorized assistance. Ethically, it represents a lack of integrity and a willingness to gain an unfair advantage. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the offer without any further action. While not actively participating in cheating, this passive stance fails to uphold the responsibility to report potential violations. The ethical failure lies in a lack of proactive engagement with maintaining academic integrity. The regulatory framework often implies a duty to report observed or suspected breaches of rules to the appropriate authorities, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the examination process. A third incorrect approach would be to seek clarification from the individual offering assistance about the nature of the help, potentially engaging in a discussion that could lead to a compromise of ethical boundaries. This approach risks blurring the lines of acceptable behavior and could inadvertently lead to participation in or tacit approval of unethical conduct. The regulatory and ethical failure here is the failure to immediately and unequivocally disengage from a situation that clearly presents an ethical risk. The professional decision-making process for similar situation should involve a clear understanding of the institution's code of conduct and examination rules. When faced with a potential ethical dilemma, a professional should 1. Identify the ethical conflict. 2. Consult relevant rules and guidelines. 3. Prioritize integrity and adherence to established standards. 4. Take decisive action to uphold ethical principles, which may include refusing assistance and, if necessary, reporting the incident. 5. Avoid any actions that could be perceived as complicity or a compromise of integrity. Question 9. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive understanding of the university's operational environment. Considering American University's commitment to academic excellence and its responsibilities as an institution operating under U.S. federal and District of Columbia regulations, which of the following approaches to developing a new interdisciplinary graduate program would best ensure both strategic success and regulatory compliance? Option A. Focus on securing external funding and partnerships for the program, assuming that such collaborations will inherently satisfy all necessary compliance requirements. Option B. Develop the program based on existing successful models at other institutions without conducting a specific regulatory assessment for American University's unique operational context. Option C. Form a cross-functional task force including faculty, academic administrators, legal counsel, and compliance officers to identify all relevant federal and local regulations, accreditation standards, and ethical considerations before finalizing the program proposal. Option D. Prioritize the program's perceived marketability and potential for high enrollment numbers, deferring detailed regulatory review until after initial approval. The correct answer is D. Prioritize the program's perceived marketability and potential for high enrollment numbers, deferring detailed regulatory review until after initial approval. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the university's strategic planning process, while aiming for long-term growth and academic excellence, must navigate the complex landscape of regulatory compliance and ethical considerations inherent in its operations as an educational institution. The pressure to innovate and expand must be balanced against the need to adhere to federal and state laws governing higher education, including those related to admissions, financial aid, accreditation, and student welfare. A failure to integrate these considerations from the outset can lead to significant legal repercussions, reputational damage, and ultimately hinder the very strategic goals the plan seeks to achieve. The correct approach involves proactively engaging all relevant internal and external stakeholders, including faculty, students, administrators, alumni, and potentially regulatory bodies or legal counsel, to identify potential compliance issues and ethical dilemmas early in the strategic planning cycle. This collaborative and anticipatory method ensures that the university's strategic objectives are not only ambitious, but also legally sound and ethically defensible. Specifically, this aligns with the principles of good governance and risk management expected of educational institutions operating under U.S. federal and District of Columbia regulations. It demonstrates a commitment to transparency, accountability, and responsible stewardship of resources and student trust, which are foundational ethical and regulatory expectations. An approach that prioritizes immediate financial gains without thoroughly assessing regulatory implications would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to violations of federal financial aid regulations, e.g., Title Roman IV of the Higher Education Act, which could result in severe penalties, including loss of funding and accreditation. Similarly, an approach that focuses solely on academic prestige without considering accessibility and equity could inadvertently create barriers that violate anti-discrimination laws or ethical commitments to diversity and inclusion. Furthermore, an approach that bypasses established internal review processes or legal counsel to expedite decision-making risks, overlooking critical compliance requirements, potentially exposing the university to legal challenges and undermining its long-term sustainability. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This begins with clearly defining the strategic objectives. Next, identify all potential regulatory touchpoints and ethical considerations relevant to those objectives. Then, engage a diverse group of stakeholders to brainstorm potential challenges and opportunities. Crucially, consult with legal counsel and compliance officers to ensure a thorough understanding of applicable laws and regulations. Finally, integrate findings into the strategic plan, developing mitigation strategies for identified risks and ensuring ongoing monitoring and adaptation to maintain compliance and ethical integrity. Question 10. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of unusual collaboration on a recent online assignment among several students who are not enrolled in the same study group. This pattern includes identical phrasing in several complex analytical sections and a shared revision history on a cloud-based document accessed by these students shortly before the submission deadline. What is the most appropriate initial step to take? Option A. Immediately report the students for academic misconduct to the Dean of Students, citing the monitoring system's findings as conclusive evidence of plagiarism. Option B. Initiate a formal inquiry process by documenting the observed patterns, gathering all relevant assignment submissions and system logs, and then scheduling individual meetings with each student to discuss their work and the observed similarities. Option C. Advise the students involved that their collaboration has been detected and warn them against future similar activities, considering the matter resolved if they see such behavior. Option D. Share the monitoring system's findings and the specific instances of identical phrasing with the students' classmates to highlight the importance of academic integrity. The correct answer is A. Immediately report the students for academic misconduct to the Dean of Students, citing the monitoring system's findings as conclusive evidence of plagiarism. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to interpret and act upon information from a monitoring system that may indicate a violation of American universities' academic integrity policies. The core difficulty lies in discerning whether the observed pattern constitutes a genuine breach or a misunderstanding, and then determining the appropriate course of action without prejudging the student. Careful judgment is required to balance the university's commitment to academic honesty with fairness to the student. The correct approach involves initiating a formal inquiry process as outlined by American universities' academic integrity guidelines. This approach is professionally sound because it adheres to established procedures designed to ensure due process and a fair investigation. Specifically, it involves gathering further information, documenting observations, and providing the student with an opportunity to respond to any allegations. This aligns with the university's regulatory framework for academic misconduct, which typically mandates a structured and transparent investigation process. An incorrect approach would be to immediately confront the student with an accusation of plagiarism, or to dismiss the observed pattern without further investigation. Immediately accusing the student is ethically problematic, as it presumes guilt without evidence and bypasses the university's established procedures for handling academic integrity concerns. This fails to uphold the principle of fairness and due process. Dismissing the pattern without investigation, on the other hand, would be a failure to uphold the university's regulatory obligation to monitor and address potential academic misconduct, potentially allowing violations to go unaddressed and undermining the integrity of academic assessments. Another incorrect approach would be to share the monitoring system's findings with other students or faculty without proper authorization, which would violate student privacy and university policy regarding confidential information. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and procedures, fairness, and thorough investigation. This involves 1. Recognizing potential issues. 2. Consulting relevant university policies and guidelines. 3. Gathering objective evidence. 4. Initiating the appropriate formal process. And 5. Ensuring all parties have an opportunity to be heard. Question 11. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a potential security breach during the administration of the American University Washington, D.C. entrance exam, with a high potential impact on the university's reputation and the integrity of the admissions process. A proctor reports observing a student exhibiting behavior consistent with accessing unauthorized materials during the exam. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial response for the university's admissions committee? Option A. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged incident, following the university's established academic integrity policy, and inform the student of the process. Option B. Immediately disqualify the student from further consideration for admission and notify them of the alleged violation. Option C. Conduct a brief, informal conversation with the proctor to gauge the certainty of the observation before taking any action. Option D. Overlook the report due to the student's otherwise strong academic profile and the potential disruption to the admissions timeline. The correct answer is B. Immediately disqualify the student from further consideration for admission and notify them of the alleged violation. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to address potential policy violations in a fair and consistent manner. The university's entrance exam is a critical gateway, and ensuring its fairness and the integrity of the admissions process is paramount. The pressure to admit qualified students, coupled with the potential for reputational damage if a breach is mishandled, necessitates a careful and principled approach. The correct approach involves a thorough, impartial investigation that adheres strictly to American universities' established academic integrity policies and procedures. This means gathering all relevant evidence, providing the applicant with an opportunity to respond, and making a decision based on the established policy, not on external pressures or assumptions. This aligns with the ethical principles of fairness, due process, and upholding institutional standards. Specifically, the university's own published policies on academic integrity and admissions will dictate the process and potential outcomes. Relying on these documented procedures ensures transparency and consistency, which are fundamental to maintaining trust in the admissions process. An incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the applicant based solely on the suspicion of cheating without a formal investigation. This fails to provide the applicant with due process and violates the principle of innocent until proven guilty, which is often implicitly or explicitly part of institutional policies. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the concern due to the applicant's strong academic record or potential contribution to the university. This prioritizes expediency or perceived benefit over integrity and fairness, undermining the credibility of the admissions process and setting a dangerous precedent. Finally, an approach that involves informal discussions with faculty without following established reporting or investigation protocols would be a failure, as it bypasses the structured and documented process designed to ensure fairness and accountability. Professionals in university admissions and academic affairs should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the relevant institutional policies and procedures. This is followed by objective fact-finding, ensuring all parties have a chance to be heard, and making a decision that is consistent with established guidelines and ethical principles. Documentation at each stage is crucial for accountability and future reference. Question 12. Process analysis reveals that American University is considering the integration of an artificial intelligence (AI) tool to assist in the initial screening of undergraduate applications. This tool promises to streamline the review process by identifying patterns and predicting applicant success based on historical data. Given the regulatory framework governing U.S. higher education and the ethical considerations of AI in admissions, which of the following approaches best represents a responsible and compliant strategy for evaluating and potentially implementing this AI tool? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that includes rigorous bias testing of the AI algorithms, an audit of the data used for training, and the development of clear protocols for human oversight and final decision-making, ensuring alignment with U.S. anti-discrimination laws and data privacy principles. Option B. Prioritize the rapid deployment of the AI tool to realize immediate cost savings and efficiency gains, assuming that the underlying algorithms are inherently objective and that human reviewers will ultimately make the final decisions. Option C. Focus solely on the technical capabilities of the AI tool, such as its speed and predictive accuracy, without conducting an in-depth review of its ethical implications or potential for bias, as long as it meets basic functional requirements. Option D. Implement the AI tool with minimal initial testing, relying on post-implementation feedback to identify and address any issues, and assuming that any potential biases will be minor and easily correctable through future updates. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that includes rigorous bias testing of the AI algorithms, an audit of the data used for training, and the development of clear protocols for human oversight and final decision-making, ensuring alignment with U.S. anti-discrimination laws and data privacy principles. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate the ethical and regulatory landscape surrounding the use of artificial intelligence in academic admissions, specifically within the context of American universities' established policies and U.S. federal regulations governing higher education and data privacy. The core challenge lies in balancing the potential efficiencies and insights offered by AI with the imperative to ensure fairness, transparency, and compliance with anti-discrimination laws. Careful judgment is required to avoid introducing bias, maintaining data integrity, and upholding the university's commitment to equitable admissions. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that prioritizes understanding and mitigating potential risks before full implementation. This approach aligns with the principles of responsible AI deployment, emphasizing due diligence and adherence to ethical guidelines. Specifically, it necessitates a thorough review of the AI tool's algorithms for bias, an evaluation of its data sources for representativeness, and a clear articulation of how its outputs will be used to support, not replace, human decision-making. This aligns with U.S. federal regulations that prohibit discrimination in educational programs and activities, such as Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the principles of data privacy and security, which are increasingly governed by state-level legislation and institutional policies. The focus is on proactive risk management and ensuring that the AI tool enhances, rather than compromises, the fairness and integrity of the admissions process. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the potential cost savings of AI overlooks the significant regulatory and ethical implications. Its failure to conduct a thorough impact assessment could lead to the inadvertent perpetuation or amplification of existing biases, potentially violating anti-discrimination laws and damaging the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes rapid implementation without adequate testing or validation risks deploying a flawed system. This could result in erroneous admissions decisions, leading to legal challenges and a loss of trust from applicants and the wider academic community. Furthermore, an approach that neglects to establish clear guidelines for human oversight and intervention fails to address the critical need for human judgment in the admissions process, potentially leading to a depersonalization of admissions and a disregard for nuanced applicant profiles that AI might not fully capture. Professional decision-making in such situations should follow a structured process. First, identify the potential benefits and risks of the technology. Second, research and understand all applicable U.S. federal and state regulations, as well as institutional policies. Third, conduct a thorough impact assessment, including bias testing and data privacy review. Fourth, develop clear implementation guidelines and oversight mechanisms. And finally, establish a continuous monitoring and evaluation process to ensure ongoing compliance and effectiveness. Question 13. Governance review demonstrates that the Office of Admissions at American University is experiencing significant delays in processing undergraduate applications, leading to concerns about timely notification to prospective students and potential impact on enrollment targets. The review highlights several areas where operational inefficiencies may be contributing to these delays. The Director of Admissions is tasked with recommending a strategy to optimize the application review process. Which of the following strategies best balances the need for process optimization with the imperative to maintain the integrity and fairness of the admissions process, in accordance with general U.S. higher education operational standards. Option A. Expedite the application review process by significantly reducing the number of review stages and delegating final decision-making authority to a smaller, centralized committee to accelerate throughput. Option B. Focus solely on increasing the speed of initial application screening by automating as many initial checks as possible, even if it means a higher rate of initial rejections that may require later manual review. Option C. Prioritize cost savings by reducing the admissions staff by 20% and reallocating remaining staff to handle the current application volume, assuming that increased efficiency will compensate for the reduced personnel. Option D. Implement a phased approach to process optimization, beginning with a detailed analysis of current workflows to identify specific bottlenecks, followed by targeted technology enhancements and staff training to address identified inefficiencies, while maintaining all existing review stages and quality control measures. Correct answer is D. Implement a phased approach to process optimization, beginning with a detailed analysis of current workflows to identify specific bottlenecks, followed by targeted technology enhancements and staff training to address identified inefficiencies, while maintaining all existing review stages and quality control measures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair admissions with the practical realities of managing a high-volume application process. The pressure to process applications efficiently can sometimes conflict with the need for thoroughness and adherence to established protocols. Careful judgment is required to ensure that process optimization does not inadvertently lead to procedural shortcuts that compromise fairness or compliance with American universities, stated admissions policies, and relevant U.S. federal regulations concerning educational institutions. The correct approach involves a systematic review and enhancement of existing processes, focusing on identifying bottlenecks and inefficiencies without compromising the integrity of the admissions decision-making. This includes leveraging technology for administrative tasks, standardizing review criteria where appropriate, and ensuring adequate staffing and training for admissions officers. This approach is justified by the principles of good governance and operational efficiency, which are implicitly expected of any reputable educational institution. Furthermore, it aligns with the general regulatory expectation in the U.S. that institutions maintain fair and transparent admissions processes, avoiding arbitrary or discriminatory practices. The focus on data-driven improvements and continuous feedback loops ensures that the optimization efforts are effective and sustainable, upholding the university's commitment to academic excellence and equitable access. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed without considering the impact on review quality would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to overlooking critical application components or failing to identify potential issues, thereby undermining the fairness of the admissions process and potentially violating implicit or explicit university policies on thorough review. Another incorrect approach that involves bypassing established review stages to meet arbitrary deadlines would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This could result in inconsistent application evaluations and could be perceived as preferential treatment, damaging the university's reputation and potentially leading to challenges based on unfair practices. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes cost reduction by significantly reducing the number of trained admissions personnel without a corresponding decrease in application volume would also be problematic. This would likely lead to overworked staff, increased errors, and a decline in the quality of application review, failing to meet the standards expected of a university admissions process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a comprehensive assessment of current processes, identifying specific areas for improvement. This should be followed by a pilot testing of proposed changes, gathering feedback from stakeholders, and implementing changes incrementally. A continuous monitoring and evaluation framework is crucial to ensure that optimization efforts achieve their intended goals without compromising quality, fairness, or regulatory compliance. Professionals should always prioritize adherence to established policies and ethical standards, even when faced with pressure for efficiency. Question 14. The risk matrix shows a moderate risk of incomplete application components impacting the integrity of the admissions process. An applicant, otherwise highly qualified with exceptional academic achievements and strong extracurricular involvement, initially failed to disclose a minor disciplinary issue from their high school years on their application. The admissions committee is aware of this omission and has received confirmation of the disciplinary action from the high school. The committee must decide how to proceed. Which of the following represents the most professionally sound and ethically justifiable approach? Option A. Immediately reject the applicant's application due to the initial omission and failure to disclose the disciplinary issue, as per the stated policy on application completeness. Option B. Accept the applicant's application without further inquiry, given their otherwise outstanding qualifications, and consider the omission a minor oversight. Option C. Grant the applicant an exception to the disclosure policy due to their exceptional academic record, allowing their application to proceed without further scrutiny of the disciplinary issue. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire file, including the disclosed information and the nature of the disciplinary issue, to determine if they still meet the university's academic and character standards, and make a decision based on this holistic assessment. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire file, including the disclosed information and the nature of the disciplinary issue, to determine if they still meet the university's academic and character standards, and make a decision based on this holistic assessment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student admissions and potential external pressures. The admissions committee must navigate the ethical obligation to uphold the integrity of the admissions process against the risk of appearing inconsistent or overly lenient, which could undermine future admission standards. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision is both fair to the applicant and consistent with the university's stated policies and values. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective review of the applicant's entire file, focusing on whether the disclosed information, even if incomplete initially, meets the university's established academic and character standards. This approach is ethically justified by the principle of fairness and due process. It acknowledges that initial applications may have minor omissions and allows for a reasoned decision based on the totality of evidence, without prejudging the applicant based on a single, potentially minor, discrepancy. This aligns with the American University's commitment to a holistic review process, as outlined in its admissions guidelines, which emphasizes evaluating applicants on a range of factors beyond just standardized test scores or single essay submissions. An incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the applicant solely because of the initial omission, without further investigation or consideration of the applicant's overall qualifications and the nature of the omitted information. This fails to uphold the principle of fairness and could be seen as an arbitrary application of policy, potentially violating the spirit of the university's admissions process, which aims to identify promising students from diverse backgrounds. Another incorrect approach would be to accept the applicant without any further scrutiny or acknowledgement of the omission, simply because the applicant is otherwise highly qualified. This approach risks undermining the integrity of the admissions process by implicitly condoning incomplete applications, and could set a precedent for future applicants to be less diligent in their submissions. It fails to address the ethical responsibility to ensure all applicants adhere to the stated requirements, even if those requirements are later found to be minor. A further incorrect approach would be to grant the applicant special consideration or an exception to the rules due to their strong academic record, without a clear and documented policy basis for such exceptions. This could lead to accusations of favoritism and inconsistency, eroding trust in the admissions process, and potentially violating principles of equal treatment for all applicants. A professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific university policies and ethical guidelines governing admissions. 2. Gathering all relevant facts about the applicant's submission and the nature of any discrepancies. 3. Assessing the impact of the discrepancy on the overall evaluation of the applicant. 4. Consulting with relevant stakeholders or committees if policy interpretation is unclear. And 5. Making a decision that is consistent, fair, and defensible based on established criteria. Question 15. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a proposed new online course platform could significantly increase revenue for American University, Washington, D.C., but it requires substantial upfront investment and introduces new data privacy concerns. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the university's regulatory framework and ethical obligations? Option A. Prioritize the platform adoption solely based on the projected revenue increase, assuming that any regulatory or policy issues can be addressed retroactively. Option B. Proceed with the platform adoption after a thorough review of its financial projections and a risk assessment of the data privacy implications, ensuring compliance with all relevant university policies and data protection regulations. Option C. Delay the platform adoption indefinitely due to the upfront investment, even if the long-term revenue potential is substantial and the risks are manageable. Option D. Implement the platform immediately to capture market share, deferring detailed policy compliance checks and data privacy reviews until after the launch. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the platform adoption after a thorough review of its financial projections and a risk assessment of the data privacy implications, ensuring compliance with all relevant university policies and data protection regulations. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the potential benefits of a new initiative against its associated costs and risks, all within the specific regulatory environment of American University, Washington, D.C. The challenge lies in identifying and evaluating all relevant factors, including financial implications, operational feasibility, and crucially, compliance with university policies and any applicable external regulations governing educational institutions or their financial dealings. A careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision made is not only financially sound, but also ethically responsible and legally compliant. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment that prioritizes adherence to the American University, Washington, D.C.'s established policies and procedures for financial decision-making and project approval. This includes understanding the university's risk tolerance, its mission, and any specific guidelines for resource allocation. The justification for this approach lies in the fundamental principle of institutional governance and compliance. University, like any organization, operate under a framework of internal rules and external laws. Prioritizing these ensures that decisions are made transparently, accountably, and in a manner that protects the university's interests and reputation. This approach aligns with ethical standards of fiduciary responsibility and good stewardship of institutional resources. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on maximizing immediate financial returns without considering the university's strategic objectives or risk appetite would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the broader institutional context and a potential violation of internal policies that mandate a holistic evaluation. Another incorrect approach that overlooks potential compliance issues with university policies or external regulations, even if financially attractive, represents a significant ethical and legal failure. Such an oversight could lead to penalties, reputational damage, and operational disruptions. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or incomplete data, rather than a structured and thorough analysis, demonstrates a lack of professional rigor and a failure to meet the standards of due diligence expected in institutional decision-making. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured framework. This begins with clearly defining the problem or opportunity. Next, identify all relevant stakeholders and their perspectives. Then gather comprehensive data, including financial projections, operational impacts, and regulatory considerations. Evaluate potential solutions or initiatives against established criteria, which must include compliance with university policies and ethical standards. Finally, document the decision-making process and the rationale behind the chosen course of action. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are well-informed, defensible, and aligned with the institution's overall goals and responsibilities. Question 16. The efficiency study reveals that American University, Washington, D.C. is facing a potential shortfall in its projected enrollment numbers for the upcoming academic year, which could impact its financial stability. The study suggests that relaxing certain academic admission thresholds and offering more flexible financial aid packages to borderline candidates could significantly boost enrollment figures. Considering the university's commitment to academic excellence and equitable admissions, which of the following approaches best navigates this situation while upholding professional and ethical standards? Option A. Adjust the academic admission thresholds downwards across the board for all applicants to ensure the enrollment target is met and reallocate existing financial aid funds to accommodate the larger incoming class. Option B. Implement a targeted outreach program to prospective students who narrowly miss the standard academic cutoffs, offering them a chance to submit additional materials or undergo a supplementary interview to demonstrate their potential, while ensuring financial aid decisions remain separate and based on established need and merit criteria. Option C. Prioritize admitting students who express a strong financial need and are willing to accept any available financial aid, even if their academic qualifications are below the university's typical standards, to secure enrollment numbers. Option D. Focus solely on increasing marketing efforts and highlighting the university's prestige to attract more applicants, without altering admission standards or financial aid policies, accepting whatever enrollment numbers naturally result. The correct answer is B. Implement a targeted outreach program to prospective students who narrowly miss the standard academic cutoffs, offering them a chance to submit additional materials or undergo a supplementary interview to demonstrate their potential, while ensuring financial aid decisions remain separate and based on established need and merit criteria. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's financial interests with its ethical obligations to its students and the integrity of its admissions process. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create a conflict of interest, potentially leading to decisions that compromise fairness and transparency. Careful judgment is required to ensure that admissions decisions are based on merit and suitability, not solely on financial considerations. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective review of all admissions applications, adhering strictly to established academic and personal criteria, and ensuring that any financial aid decisions are made independently and equitably, without influencing admissions outcomes. This aligns with the ethical principles of fairness, transparency, and academic integrity, which are paramount in university admissions. It also implicitly adheres to the spirit of regulations governing educational institutions, which emphasize non-discriminatory practices and the pursuit of academic excellence. An approach that prioritizes meeting enrollment targets by admitting students who may not fully meet academic standards, or by offering financial incentives that are not needs-based or merit-based, represents a significant ethical and potentially regulatory failure. This could be seen as a form of deceptive practice, undermining the credibility of the admissions process and potentially violating principles of equal opportunity. Furthermore, any approach that allows financial considerations to override objective academic assessment could be interpreted as a breach of fiduciary duty to the university's mission and its stakeholders, including current and future students. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and ethical guidelines. This involves 1. Clearly understanding and applying the university's stated admissions criteria. 2. Maintaining objectivity and avoiding undue influence from external pressures, such as enrollment targets. 3. Ensuring transparency in the admissions and financial aid processes. 4. Documenting decisions thoroughly to demonstrate adherence to established procedures. 5. Seeking guidance from senior leadership or ethics committees when faced with complex or conflicting priorities. Question 17. Benchmark analysis indicates that during a critical phase of the American University Washington, D.C. entrance examination, an applicant observes another candidate exhibiting behavior strongly suggestive of academic dishonesty, such as discreetly referencing unauthorized materials. The applicant is aware that reporting such an incident could potentially impact the other candidate's application and create an uncomfortable situation. However, they also understand the importance of maintaining the integrity of the examination process. Which of the following actions best reflects a professionally ethical and responsible approach for the observing applicant? Option A. Discreetly and factually report the observed behavior to the examination proctor or designated university official responsible for overseeing the exam. Option B. Ignore the observed behavior to avoid potential conflict or negative repercussions for oneself or the other applicant. Option C. Attempt to subtly draw the examiner's attention to the other applicant's behavior without explicitly stating the nature of the suspected misconduct. Option D. Directly confront the other applicant about their suspected misconduct during the examination. The correct answer is A. Discreetly and factually report the observed behavior to the examination proctor or designated university official responsible for overseeing the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to navigate the ethical considerations of academic integrity and institutional reputation within the context of a competitive university entrance examination. The applicant's awareness of potential misconduct and their subsequent actions or inactions directly impact their own candidacy and the integrity of the American University Washington, D.C. admissions process. Careful judgment is required to uphold ethical standards while also pursuing admission. The correct approach involves proactively and transparently reporting the observed potential misconduct to the appropriate university authority. This demonstrates a commitment to academic integrity and ethical conduct, which are core values for any academic institution. By reporting, the applicant acts as a responsible member of the academic community, contributing to a fair and equitable admissions process. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty and integrity expected of all students, particularly in an entrance examination setting where fairness is paramount. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the observed misconduct. This inaction could be interpreted as tacit approval or a lack of commitment to ethical standards, potentially undermining the applicant's own character assessment. It also fails to uphold the integrity of the examination process. Another incorrect approach would be to confront the other applicant directly. This could lead to an uncomfortable or even confrontational situation, potentially escalating the issue without involving the proper authorities. It bypasses the established procedures for addressing academic misconduct and places the applicant in a position of judgment and enforcement that is not their role. A further incorrect approach would be to use the observed misconduct to gain an unfair advantage, such as by subtly hinting at the other applicant's actions to an examiner in hopes of creating a negative impression. This is manipulative and unethical, as it attempts to benefit from another's potential wrongdoing rather than addressing the issue through appropriate channels. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Identifying the ethical dilemma, recognizing potential academic misconduct. 2. Consulting relevant guidelines, understanding the university's policies on academic integrity and examination conduct. 3. Reporting to the appropriate authority, discreetly and factually informing the examination proctor or admissions office. 4. Maintaining personal integrity, ensuring one's own actions are ethical and above reproach. Question 18. The evaluation methodology shows a commitment to holistic review of applicant essays, but concerns have been raised about potential unconscious bias influencing the assessment of creativity and personal narrative. Which of the following approaches best addresses this implementation challenge while adhering to principles of fair and equitable admissions? Option A. Focus the essay evaluation primarily on adherence to established academic writing standards and grammatical correctness, as these are universal indicators of academic readiness. Option B. Implement mandatory training for all admissions committee members on unconscious bias. Establish a rubric that balances objective criteria with qualitative assessment of content and insight, and require essays to be reviewed by at least 2 committee members with diverse backgrounds. Option C. Streamline the essay review process by assigning essays to individual reviewers who specialize in specific academic disciplines, allowing for deeper, albeit singular, expertise. Option D. Rely on the individual judgment of experienced admissions officers to identify strong essays, assuming their professional experience inherently mitigates bias. The correct answer is B. Implement mandatory training for all admissions committee members on unconscious bias. Establish a rubric that balances objective criteria with qualitative assessment of content and insight, and require essays to be reviewed by at least 2 committee members with diverse backgrounds. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an admissions committee member to balance the university's stated commitment to holistic review with the potential for unconscious bias to influence the evaluation of application essays. The challenge lies in ensuring that the methodology, while aiming for a comprehensive assessment, does not inadvertently disadvantage applicants from diverse backgrounds or those whose experiences may not align with traditional metrics of success. Careful judgment is required to identify and mitigate potential biases within the evaluation process. The correct approach involves a structured, multifaceted review process that explicitly addresses the potential for bias and emphasizes objective criteria where possible, while still allowing for qualitative assessment. This approach aligns with the ethical imperative to provide fair and equitable consideration to all applicants. Specifically, it requires training committee members on recognizing and mitigating unconscious bias, utilizing diverse perspectives in the review process, and implementing a system where essays are reviewed by multiple individuals with differing backgrounds and expertise. This ensures that subjective interpretations are cross-checked and that the evaluation is grounded in the university's stated values of inclusivity and academic merit, adhering to principles of fairness and equal opportunity in admissions. An incorrect approach that relies solely on individual interpretation of essays without a structured bias mitigation strategy fails to uphold the principles of fairness and equity. This can lead to subjective evaluations that may be influenced by personal biases, inadvertently penalizing applicants whose writing styles or experiences differ from the reviewer's own. Such an approach risks violating ethical standards by not providing a level playing field for all candidates. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes a single dominant metric for essay evaluation, such as adherence to a specific writing convention, over the content and substance of the applicant's ideas, would also be professionally unsound. This overlooks the diversity of expression and the potential for unique insights that holistic review aims to capture. It fails to acknowledge that strong ideas can be presented in various stylistic forms and may not conform to a narrow definition of good writing. A third incorrect approach that involves a superficial review, where essays are quickly skimmed without deep engagement or consideration of the applicant's background and experiences, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and respect for the application process and the applicant's effort. It undermines the stated goal of holistic review by failing to engage with the applicant's narrative and potential contributions to the university community. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to continuous improvement of evaluation methodologies. This includes regular training on bias awareness, seeking feedback from diverse stakeholders, and periodically reviewing the effectiveness of the evaluation process against stated goals of fairness and inclusivity. Professionals should actively question assumptions, seek out diverse perspectives, and prioritize transparency and accountability in their decision-making. Question 19. Quality control measures reveal that a member of the American University Admissions Committee has a close personal friendship with an applicant whose file is currently under review. The committee member is aware of this relationship and its potential to influence their judgment. What is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct course of action for this committee member? Option A. Vote on the applicant's admission without mentioning the personal relationship to avoid creating awkwardness within the committee. Option B. Advocate for the applicant's admission during committee discussions, emphasizing the applicant's strengths while downplaying the personal connection. Option C. Disclose the personal relationship to the admissions committee and recuse themselves from all discussions and voting concerning the applicant's admission. Option D. Abstain from voting on the applicant's admission, but continue to participate in committee discussions about the applicant's qualifications. The correct answer is C. Disclose the personal relationship to the admissions committee and recuse themselves from all discussions and voting concerning the applicant's admission. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an admissions committee member to navigate potential conflicts of interest and maintain the integrity of the admissions process. The challenge lies in balancing personal relationships with the obligation to uphold fair and objective evaluation standards, as mandated by American universities, admissions policies, and ethical guidelines for university staff. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all applicants are assessed based on merit and qualifications, not on personal connections. The correct approach involves recusing oneself from the decision-making process for the applicant with whom there is a personal relationship. This upholds best professional practice by adhering to principles of impartiality and fairness. Specifically, university admissions policies, often guided by principles of academic integrity and equal opportunity, require that all admissions decisions be free from undue influence or bias. By recusing, the committee member avoids any appearance or reality of favoritism, thereby safeguarding the credibility of the admissions process and adhering to ethical standards that prohibit conflicts of interest. An incorrect approach of advocating for the applicant's admission, despite the personal relationship, represents a significant ethical failure. This directly violates the principle of impartiality and introduces bias into the evaluation. It undermines the trust placed in the admissions committee to make objective decisions based on established criteria, potentially leading to the admission of less qualified candidates over more deserving ones. Such an action could also contravene university policies on conflict of interest and professional conduct. Another incorrect approach of voting on the applicant's admission without disclosing the personal relationship is also a serious ethical lapse. Failure to disclose creates a hidden conflict of interest. It deprives the rest of the committee of crucial information needed to assess the fairness of the evaluation and vote, and it violates transparency requirements inherent in ethical decision-making. This lack of transparency can erode confidence in the admissions process and may lead to accusations of impropriety. A further incorrect approach of abstaining from voting but not recusing oneself from discussions about the applicant is problematic. While abstaining from a vote might seem neutral, remaining involved in discussions can still exert subtle influence or create an appearance of bias. True recusal means stepping away from all aspects of the decision-making process for that specific applicant, including deliberations, to ensure complete objectivity. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear framework. First, identify any potential conflicts of interest, including personal relationships with applicants. Second, consult relevant university policies and ethical guidelines regarding conflicts of interest and admissions procedures. Third, if a conflict is identified, the professional obligation is to disclose it immediately and recuse oneself from any discussion or decision-making related to that applicant. Fourth, prioritize the integrity and fairness of the process above personal considerations. Question 20. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of student engagement with online learning materials that correlates with academic performance. However, the data collected was initially intended solely for providing personalized academic support, and students were not explicitly informed that this engagement data might be used to inform academic assessments or evaluations. A faculty member proposes using this data to identify students who may be struggling and to adjust their grades accordingly, arguing it provides a more holistic view of student effort. What is the most ethically responsible course of action? Option A. Continue using the monitoring system for academic assessment, but implement post hoc anonymization techniques to protect student identities. Option B. Proceed with using the data for academic assessments as proposed, as it offers a more comprehensive understanding of student effort and potential for support. Option C. Immediately cease using the monitoring system for any academic assessment purposes and initiate a comprehensive review of data privacy and consent policies related to its use. Option D. Disable the monitoring system entirely and revert to traditional assessment methods without further investigation into its potential benefits or ethical implications. The correct answer is C. Immediately cease using the monitoring system for any academic assessment purposes and initiate a comprehensive review of data privacy and consent policies related to its use. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's need for data-driven decision-making with the ethical obligation to protect student privacy and ensure fair academic practices. The monitoring system, while intended to improve student support, has inadvertently created a situation where sensitive personal information could be used in ways that are not transparent or equitable. Careful judgment is required to navigate the potential for misuse of data and to uphold the trust placed in the university by its students. The correct approach involves immediately halting the use of the monitoring system for academic assessment purposes and initiating a thorough review of its data collection and usage policies. This is ethically sound because it prioritizes student privacy and academic integrity by preventing potential bias or unfair judgment based on data that was not collected with explicit consent for such use. It aligns with principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that data is only used for the purposes for which it was collected and with appropriate safeguards. Furthermore, it demonstrates a commitment to transparency and fairness by addressing the issue proactively and involving relevant stakeholders in finding a responsible solution. An incorrect approach would be to continue using the monitoring system for academic assessment while attempting to anonymize the data after the fact. This is ethically problematic because it fails to address the fundamental issue of consent and the potential for re-identification. The data was collected under the premise of student support, not academic evaluation, and repurposing it without explicit consent violates privacy expectations. This approach also risks introducing subtle biases that may not be fully mitigated by anonymization, potentially leading to unfair academic outcomes. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the findings and continue with the current system, assuming no harm will come of it. This is ethically negligent and professionally irresponsible. It disregards the potential for harm to students, erodes trust, and exposes the university to significant reputational and potentially legal risks. It fails to uphold the duty of care owed to students and demonstrates a lack of commitment to ethical data stewardship. A third incorrect approach would be to immediately disable the system without any further investigation or communication. While seemingly protective, this lacks a nuanced understanding of the system's intended benefits and the university's broader goals. A more professional decision-making process would involve a structured approach. First, pause the problematic use of the data. Second, conduct a comprehensive ethical and privacy review of the system. Third, engage with students and faculty to understand concerns and gather input. And finally, develop revised policies and procedures for data collection and usage that are transparent, consensual, and aligned with ethical principles and university values. This iterative process ensures that solutions are well considered and effectively address the identified issues while preserving the potential benefits of technology.